Future Warrior, Dawn of the Deimos. Chapter 19. Stalker watched as the last of the UEA formations began to pull back across the massive Theodore Hughes Bridge, the length and breadth of the mighty bridge covered with withdrawing units of armor and infantry. Stalker shook his head at the sight, disgusted at the orders and whoever had given them. His feelings were mirrored on the faces of the men and women coming across the bridge, either riding on top of armored vehicles or trudging dejectedly across on foot. Many of them were RDR and irregular militia who, in pulling back, were abandoning their homes across the Rhine to the enemy. Stalker turned and glanced behind him. Hundreds of black armored vehicles and soldiers of the Terra Nova, including the battered remains of the 21st Company, were dug in to cover the bridge and the opposite bank. The withdrawal did have one advantage, he had to admit. It allowed for reconsolidation of the front line and of the fighting formations, the Terra Nova having now reformed in the field in full, albeit weakened, divisional strength. Fucking pathetic sight, isn't it? If it were up to me and Alpha One, we would still be holding the Deimos by the balls. You don't win wars by evacuations. Stalker's stony expression cracked for a moment. Yeah, D, you let the other guy do that. Next to him, Big D nodded in agreement, his face etched in a scowl. Your boys look pretty shot up. I hear they did some good work. Be sure to pass on my and Alpha One's thanks. Stalker couldn't remain serious and laughed. I'll let them know the powers that be are pleased they didn't embarrass the uniform. A shadow passed behind Stalker's eyes. I lost a lot of good people. We all did. They will be remembered, honored, their names etched in the eternal stone, ever to be gazed upon and revered by the men and women of Earth and the Terra Nova. Stalker looked to Big D in surprise, realizing just how much his old friend had changed in the last few years, his face hollow, but his eyes still burning with a deep fire. I never took you for a pious man, D. Neither did I. D breathed heavily. But being in a constant company of death changes everyone. I want their sacrifice, what they have done and have yet to do, to be remembered. I want the next generation who wear this uniform to remember them, to see the names and know the honor they have to serve in the same division as the heroes I have been privileged to serve with and have seen fall. Stalker let the words wash over him. He had seen the shrine to the Terra Nova's fallen several times and made a point to visit it and pay his respects whenever he could. The towering structure was located in the center of the old capital of the state that had spawned the Terra Nova, one of the original 10 founding states of the UEL. Carved in its solid stone were the names of all those that had given their lives in service to Earth, the League, and the Terra Nova. New recruits were taken to the shrine as part of their training and given a tour of the spacious complex. It was there that stories of the deeds and sacrifices of the division would be imparted to them. A reminder to those who wished to serve that even veterans who entered the Terra Nova would have to prove themselves worthy of the honor of wearing the division's midnight black armor and skull insignia. Go for Sunray 2. Stalker looked across to D as he listened to an incoming message on his TACnet. D suddenly stiffened, his fists bunching up. Understood. We're on way. Sunray 2 out. Abruptly, he spun on his heel. Stalker, the brass want to chat face-to-face, you and your CIO, to... They're a few clicks further up the line. I'll grab us a ride. Roger that, D. Be with you in a sec. Stalker walked brusquely to where Link and the rest of the 21st were hastily dug in around some mortar pits, many of the men catching a few moments of badly needed rest. Iron Horse, time to earn your pay. You and me have got a meeting with the brass ASAP. Let's go. Link, keep the boys in good cover and out of trouble until we get back clear. Link looked up from the bottom of a hastily dug slit trench and threw a lazy, mocking salute before unceremoniously rolling back over. From a nearby hole, the CIO jumped up, his face full of youthful enthusiasm. Good to go, boss. Their ride, Stalker discovered, was one of the division's newly redeployed diamond scales, the vehicle coming complete with battle scars from the previous fighting around Wolfstein. After loading into the waiting vehicle, the heavy-armored IFV lurched off and took them through a maze of silent streets to their destination. As soon as Stalker stepped out of the diamond scale behind Big D, he knew instantly that something was amiss. The IFV had come to a halt on the edge of a small park surrounded by tall buildings. A small group stood close by on the grass waiting for them. Stalker immediately recognized General Supatar and the USOC Regional Commander, General Steve Murray. Next to them stood the unmistakable figure of Alpha One, the Terra Nova's commanding general, as well as a handful of staff officers belonging to the three generals. Closed by two small mixed units of cavalrymen with patches of the 7th Armored Cavalry and USOC commandos stood alertly, while above them a Terra Nova Strider loomed menacingly. D headed straight for them. Without waiting, Stalker raised a hand and halted his CIO, "Hold here a sec," and followed. As he approached, Stalker saw the group were all staring intently at him, their faces cold and inscrutable. D reached them a few paces ahead of him and said something to the gathering that Stalker didn't catch, before falling silent and turning around. Stalker saluted the group, feeling very uncomfortable. "I'm glad you're here, Battle Commander. Would you call your CIO over? I think he should be part of this as well." "Yes, sir." Stalker turned away from Alpha One and, trying to hide his confusion, waved his CIO over to the gathering. As the CIO reached the group, Stalker grew even more confused as the USOC Brigadier General took a step forward and extended him a hand. "Good of you to come." The CIO instinctively reached out and took the general's hand. He never saw the heavy right hook that smashed into his jaw, the young man being taken completely by surprise and falling heavily to the ground. Stalker, more on instinct than through any real conception of what had happened or plan, went for his close combat weapons. But strong hands grasped his in an iron grip before they could reach his pistol or knife hilt. Stalker looked up to see Big D holding his wrists, and, in an instant, it dawned on him they hadn't been watching him, they had been watching his CIO. Feeling him relax, D gently released Stalker's wrists. "Steady on, Stalker. There's more going on here than you realize." Two of the aides swiftly disarmed the CIO and dragged him groggily to his feet, a thin line of blood running from his bottom lip. Stalker expected a flurry of recriminations and abuse from the young man for the unprovoked attack, but instead his jaw set, and he said nothing. Murray faced the man, his expression one of cold fury. "So this is him, the bad seed. You're just lucky you believe you're on our side. If you were anyone else but intelligence branch, you would be dead now." Stalker did a double take. "He is the mole." A sneer crossed the young man's face, and looking at him, Stalker realized he was truly seeing him for the first time, his face showing a mixture of arrogance and conviction. "You have betrayed your oath to the Terra Nova. You disgrace the uniform, passing on information and plotting in the dark like the rat you are." The CIO laughed in Big D's face, and for a moment Stalker thought D was going to strike him. "I serve Earth first and the Terra Nova second. Can you say the same? The 10 are Earth, boy, and you have betrayed them." Alpha One's voice was heavy with meaning, his contempt unmistakably clear. "The 11 are Earth, and I have betrayed no one, just your narrow pride and ambition." D put a steadying hand on Alpha One's shoulder as he went to take a step forward, the tension crackling. "How did you find him?" Stalker said to no one in particular. "We detected encrypted burst transmissions on intelligence branch frequencies, while our Ellen section was monitoring Deimos communications. Was largely chance. Took us a while to pin him down to, but he got careless when he was attached to the 2nd Terra and Nova's command post. We had been wondering how the intelligence branch knew the situation before we did. He obviously thought his signals would be missed amongst the chaos of the ongoing battle." Stalker nodded to Murray, everything becoming clear. The CIO had access to wide-ranging intelligence and was the perfect role for a spy. He had also been promoted to the CCU only 6 months before the Cerberus mission. Stalker suddenly had a thought. Stepping up to the CIO, "What do you mean 11? The man laughed. "You know nothing. We are the 11th of the 10, the silent division, those who see and know all, the true defenders of humanity. The 10, the UEL, everything was to prepare Earth for this moment, when our true enemies would reveal themselves." Stalker stepped back in surprise at the conviction in the man's voice. His surprise mirrored in those around him. Alpha One, the least surprised, responded first. "What do you know about the Deimos? Why are they dying? What have you done?" The CIO turned, another sneer crossing his handsome, youthful features. "You might as well know, It was your men who went and retrieved it for us, after all. It's a bioweapon, developed to destroy the Deimos threat using ancient DNA samples recovered on Mars. We needed to field test it. This seemed like as good a place as any. The news struck the small group like a bombshell, the shock absolute. Alpha 1 backhanded the intelligence branch operative with such force, he almost collapsed to the ground. This is fucking insane. The CIO spat bloody phlegm to the ground at the Terra Nova general's feet. No, this is fucking necessary. You have betrayed everything you claim to defend. Biological weapons are expressly outlawed under the UEL Charter. What you have done is madness. Call it what you want. We will do what we must to protect Earth. There is more at stake than your delicate sensibilities. In geosynchronous orbit, almost directly above the group, a heavily encrypted signal arrived at the communications center of the Ocean-class cruiser UES Southern. The message was immediately routed to the ship's captain, who, after verifying his identity, read the decoded transmission. "Do we have a go-ahead?" He looked up to the uniformed intelligence branch colonel waiting expectantly. "Yes, we have it." The captain turned away from him. "Tactical. Coordinates confirmed. All forward batteries to commence grid pattern bombardment on my mark." "Yes, Captain. All batteries are locked and standing by for your order. Fire." It was my team who retrieved the weapon, wasn't it? On the asteroid facility? The CIO turned to Stalker, a thin smile crossing his face. "Very good. We needed the signal's data as well, but the biological research records and virus DNA codes were the real objective." Supatar made a noise in his throat. "A dark future this will lead us to." Stalker ignored the comment, but felt the words keenly, Supatar echoing his own thoughts. The Deimos were there. They knew what happens when they respond in kind. The CIO was about to reply when the ground suddenly began to shake and a growing humming sound filled the air. With a flash, powerful energy blast streaked through the low cloud cover and smashed to ground. The rounds landed in the distant city across the river, massive fireballs rising into the sky at the point of impact. A moment later, the echoing blast wave crashed over the paralyzed group, almost knocking them off their feet. At once the generals began to send rushed communications. At Stalker's back another voice spoke. "It has begun." Stalker spun, and the others stopped in mid-conversation. "That's our fire, isn't it? Those bastards are covering their tracks, destroying half the city, so there's no evidence." The CIO didn't reply, and Stalker could see he was done talking, but his eyes betrayed the truth in Stalker's question. Stalker shuddered at the cold calculation of it. Half a city and unknown numbers of civilians sacrificed by people who focused only on the end game, believing that the end would justify the means regardless of the cost. Despite all that he had seen and the blood he had split, there was something strangely perverse in the realization that weapons that had long been banned under sacred oath and punishment of death in the UEL Charter had once again reared their ugly head. The weapons had been banned ever since the bloody wars of the UEL's foundation, when the UEL's enemies had sought to use them against the League and millions had died. Even if it was to combat the greatest threat that humanity had ever faced other than human nature itself, their reappearance disturbed Stalker to his very core, the dying alien's accusation hammering on his conscience. He felt dirty, somehow sullied by the realization, his honor as Terra Nova besmirched and tarnished. Stalker turned his eyes back to the burning city he had fought to save, now ashes and dust. 2 weeks had passed since the great battle in the space around Earth. The Deimos fleets had been driven fully from the system, and outside of scattered skirmishers on the system's borders, the war appeared to have almost ground to a halt. In orbit around Earth and UEF Lunar, the warships of the UEF were undergoing furious maintenance and resupply, countless repair and supply crews working around the clock to return the ships to full strength. The crash construction programs for all types of war materials initiated at the outbreak of the war continued at breakneck speed, every weapon from the smallest grenade to the mightiest warship being mass-produced by millions of workers in factories and docks across the Earth, Mars, the Moon, and in orbital facilities. Set apart from the furious activity, one man seemed unhurried. UEL chairman took his time as he crossed the floor of the vast chamber, stopping to shake hands and exchange words with many of the senators as he made his way to podium. In the chaos after the Deimos attack, this would be the first full meeting of the UEL Senate, with all senators, not just those who were part of the High Council or the Security Council present, and he was determined to make a good showing. After several minutes, he reached the speaker's position and silence slowly began to fall over the chamber. As the Senate members continued to settle down, he reviewed the people spread before him. Despite the warmth of the chamber, many were heavily dressed against the cold, not having had time to change their clothes since arriving in Iceland where the wartime session had been called. Several of the senators wore military uniforms and decorations that marked them out as veterans of the UEDF. The chairman knew that this served two purposes, giving them both increased moral authority to speak on military matters and demonstrating their personal commitment to the defense of the League. Drawing out the silence a moment longer, he took a sip from the immaculately clear glass of water on the lectern, and then, after clearing his throat, began. Welcome, senators, in this grave hour, an hour of victory, but also an hour of continued peril. Before I begin, let us have a minute's silence for the brave soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines who did not live to share this historic moment, for it is only through their sacrifice that we can meet here today. The already considerable hush of the chamber dropped still further, and the UEL chairman caught respectful nod from several of the uniformed members and from others who he knew had lost sons and daughters in the fighting. As one, the senators lowered their heads to reflect and for some to pray. The minute hung in the air, and after it passed, the silence of the chamber remained, some senators quietly comforting those for whom the loss was a real one and were still grieving. We will remember them, and we will honor them. All eyes returned to the podium as the chairman broke the silence. We will do this through our actions and our deeds. This war is far from over. It is today that the real struggle begins. We must steel our hearts for a long and bitter war, for it is today that the fight back begins. Just as the Deimos have brought war to our planet, so we will bring war to theirs. Their cities will burn as ours have burned. As long as the Deimos remain unchallenged in their home system, they can return. I will not let that happen. We deny the realities of our time at our peril. From today, with this chamber's approval, I will make it treason, punishable by death, to consort with or to venerate alien powers. This is our planet, our system. The chairman hit a small control on the panel in front of him, and around the chamber large viewing screens lit up. On them was an image of a black armored Terra Nova warrior passionately embracing a female UEF officer, smoke and burning debris in the background, their love for each other unmistakable. This is what we fight for, what we fight to protect: love, fellowship, and all that is good in humanity. All that the Deimos would see destroyed and erased forever. The chairman continued to speak and outline his policies for another 35 minutes. In that time, the image of the kiss on the deck flashed around the world and to the ships and bases above it, an image that would come to signify the war against the Deimos. Stalker shook his head in amazement as next to the image of Zoe on the screen appeared the latest NewNet feed, the image of them on the wrecked runway at UEAF Ramstein unmistakable. Zoe smiled, and Stalker wished he could have reached through the screen and kissed her again as he had that day. He had been relieved beyond measure when he had finally tracked her down alive and well to Frankfurt. After the 551 SD's crippling losses, the unit had been stood down, but Zoe had managed to find a bird that was short a crew member and had been busy flying dangerous resupply missions to the front line in southern Germany. Even though 2 full weeks had passed and they both remained in Germany, there had been no time to see each other. That, however, was about to change. I've already had the press track me down because of you, Stalker balked, wondering how long it would be before a reporter found him too. You're joking? Nope. You know what this means, darling. Stalker grew instantly suspicious and fixed the image of Zoe's grinning face with a serious stare. What? Zoe smiled innocently. We're going to need a bigger venue for our wedding. 72 hours later, Stalker stood in a hangar at UEAF Ramstein. The air in the building smelt like stale smoke and dust. Stalker knew that much of the base was still heavily damaged, although it amazed even him just how much had been rebuilt in the time that had elapsed since the Deimos attack. Stalker looked down at his dress uniform for the 100th time, trying not to fidget, feeling the most nervous he had ever felt in his entire life. Next to him, Link and Big D stood similarly dressed, Link grinning while D's expression was neutral. "You ready for this, boss?" Stalker looked sideways at Link. "I absolutely am not." D's expression cracked and the three friends shared a laugh. A UEF officer appeared around the corner of the hangar and whistled before disappearing. D looked at Stalker. "Well, this is it. Any last words?" Stalker shook his head, his mouth feeling dry. Stalker set off flanked by Link and D. As he stepped out into the warm morning sunshine, there was a reverberating crash as 1,000 soldiers snapped to attention. The men formed two ranks facing one another, while above them several camera drones belonging to various media organizations hovered. Stalker took a deep breath and set off down the human passageway leading across the tarmac. As he walked flanked by his fiends, Stalker nodded to familiar faces in the opposing lines of soldiers. One side was formed from the black armored Terra Nova soldiers of the 2nd Terra Nova, while opposite them were a mixture of armored cavalry, USOC commandos, and RDR. Stalker recognized the leader of the RDR unit who he had fought alongside in the ruins of the Mainz University and paused briefly to shake the man's hand. Ever since the bloody battle, Stalker had made up his mind to ensure that the bravery of the RDR soldiers was recognized and had recommended several for bravery awards and citations, including the unit's commander. As Stalker approached the end of the tunnel, he saw a skirmisher assault gunship parked on the runway behind a platform alongside, which was assembled several ranks of guests. Stalker at once recognized Janet Combs, who inclined her head in silent salutation. As he reached the platform, Alpha 1 extended his hand. Stalker took it and hoped that his commanding officer wouldn't notice how much his hand was shaking. Stalker couldn't help but think that he would rather take on an angry Deimos in hand-to-hand combat than be on the platform in front on the hundreds of people before him. Stalker turned and looked toward another hangar just off to his left. Another human passageway, made up of UEAF personnel, led from the platform to the building. Stalker's heart missed a beat as he caught a glimpse of pure white emerge from the hangar and begin to head down the assembled UEAF ranks. Stalker could hear the clicking sound of a group of media representatives just off to the side, furiously taking images, but he didn't care. As Zoe approached, Stalker felt all the nervousness rapidly flee from his body. She was the very picture of beauty. She wore a magnificent close-fitting dress made of the purest white material he had ever seen, the dress flowing out behind her. Stalker knew the dress must have been stupendously expensive, but it had cost them nothing after the bridal shop owner had recognized the couple as they walked in and had steadfastly refused thought payment. The owner had also refused to show Zoe any dresses until Stalker left, telling Stalker that these matters are best left to the ladies. And after seeing Zoe, Stalker couldn't agree more. As Zoe reached the platform, she threw Stalker a smile that would have melted even the coldest heart. Alpha 1 took her hand and joined it with Stalker's. The ceremony went faster for Stalker than he could have imagined or would have liked, the ceremony merging into one long, intoxicating moment. Link and D each held a ring and stepped forward to present them. Stalker got his from D and gently slipped it on Zoe's slender finger, her eyes sparking as they looked up into his. In turn, Zoe slid her ring on his, the ring feeling warm, as if Zoe's brief contact had heated the golden metal. As he said the final words, staring into Zoe's eyes, Stalker knew it was the purest moment he had ever experienced in his life, something he would remember and treasure until the very end. "I do." Alpha 1 smiled. He appeared genuinely honored to be performing the service, and Stalker made a mental note to thank him later for volunteering his considerably precious time to do the duty. The final words came like an unstoppable tide. "It is my pleasure to declare you man and wife. You may now kiss the bride." Stalker drew Zoe to him and kissed her like it was for the last time. Furious clapping, whistles, and applause broke out from the assembled ranks as the soldiers roared their approval. while at the moment above a formation of gunships streaked overhead and dropped a pattern of dazzling flares. The wake of their passing whipped around Zoe's dress, the wind making the white silk appear almost liquid in the breeze. As the ceremony broke up, there was a whirlwind of congratulations and incessant photo-taking by the media present. Stalker allowed the media their frenzy. Indeed, he was under strict orders from D to just that effect. Stalker kept his irritation hidden. He didn't truly mind anyway, he admitted to himself, his arm locked firmly around Zoe. He had what he wanted. Stalker saw Link and Janet appear at his side, and the couple offered their congratulations. Stalker needling Link about when he would be attending their wedding, Janet responding with a mirth-filled glance at Link's obvious discomfort. After the niceties were over, Stalker swooped Zoe off her feet and carried her into the waiting skirmisher. Stalker and Zoe gave one last wave as the gunship lifted off to another round of applause. As they gained height and headed to their destination, a luxury forest resort in northern Germany that had volunteered its services for the celebrity couple's honeymoon, Stalker held Zoe tight. They had been granted full 6 days of leave from duty for their honeymoon, and Stalker intended to make the most of it. Stalker wondered what would happen in the coming weeks and months, and how often he would get to see Zoe, knowing that the war would go on. Still sitting across his lap, Zoe prodded him, and Stalker looked down, slightly embarrassed as he realized he had been staring into space. Battle Commander, front and center, keep your attention right here. Stalker smiled and kissed her. Yeah, the war can wait 6 days. Atlas Heerden approached the village up a narrow, muddy track barely wide enough for a mule to walk on that hugged the mountainside. He was sweating in the heat. The air itself seemed to be thick and muggy. Everything was damp, the low-rain clouds of the monsoon rains shrouding the nearby mountains. Pausing at the top of the trail, Atlas took a drink from his water bottle, then poured the rest over his head, the water washing some of the sweat that coated his face and clothes away. All around Atlas was the green of the mountains, the small village appearing like a small brown blister on the landscape. Entering the village, Atlas did not immediately see anyone. Instead, he was drawn to a comm unit that was displaying the news net. Atlas stared at the picture the presenter was talking about, a flicker of recognition showing in his eyes. A thin smile crossed Atlas's face. Love and hope. We'll have to do something about that. Atlas was interrupted by a harsh voice in Spanish. Detener, o disparo. Atlas turned to the sound of the voice that had threatened to shoot him if he didn't stop, the speaker hidden from sight. Creo Kano, I'm expected. Get out here, we've got work to do. Atlas turned back to the Newsnet feed as around him armed men emerged from their hiding places. The presenter was still talking about the image of a couple embracing.